Have you ever wondered what truly happens behind the polished doors of a luxury retail store? What if the very people hired to provide top-notch service were instead the ones ensuring certain customers felt unwelcome? And what if the person they dismissed so carelessly was the very owner of the company? Ethan Caldwell was not just the CEO of Caldwell Retail Enterprises. He was its heart and soul. A self-made billionaire, he had built his empire from a small convenience store into a chain of luxury retail stores across the country. But his journey to success had been anything but easy. Born in a modest neighborhood in Detroit, Ethan had grown up watching his single mother work double shifts just to put food on the table. He had learned the value of hard work early, taking on part-time jobs as a teenager to help with expenses. His first taste of business came when he started selling newspapers and later flipping used electronics for a small profit. Determined to rise above his circumstances, Ethan worked his way through college, balancing multiple jobs while studying business administration. After graduation, he invested his meager savings into a tiny convenience store. It wasn't glamorous, but he had a vision. With relentless dedication and an unwavering belief in himself, he expanded that store into a thriving business. He reinvested every dollar he earned, growing his enterprise step by step until it became the luxury retail powerhouse it was today. Despite his success, he had never forgotten where he came from or the struggles he had faced as a black entrepreneur. He knew firsthand the prejudices and barriers that existed in the business world, which was why he had built his company on the principles of diversity and inclusivity. That was what made the recent allegations against his Savannah stores so disturbing. If discrimination was happening under his own brand, it was his responsibility to address it personally. One evening, as he sat in his high-rise office overlooking the city, an anonymous complaint caught his attention. It was an email from a customer who claimed that a particular branch of Caldwell Retail in Savannah, Georgia, was notorious for its poor treatment of black customers. The message was detailed and alarming. They make us feel like we don't belong. The staff ignores us, follows us around, and some outright refuse to serve us. Ethan read the email multiple times, his stomach twisting into knots. He had spent decades building his company into a beacon of inclusion and fairness, pushing back against the very discrimination he had once faced as a young entrepreneur. Memories of being turned away from stores, of being watched closely by security guards, and of being told he wasn't the right fit for certain opportunities came flooding back. He had sworn that Caldwell Retail would be different, a safe space for everyone, regardless of race or background. But now, someone was saying that his vision was being tarnished, that the values he had painstakingly instilled in his brand were being ignored in one of his own locations. Ethan felt a deep sense of betrayal, not just for himself but for the countless black customers who had likely walked into that store expecting fairness, only to be humiliated instead. His hands clenched into fists. If there was even a sliver of truth to this, he needed to see it firsthand. And he wouldn't be going in as a CEO. Before we continue, please take a moment to subscribe and turn on the notification bell to stay updated. Your support means everything to us, and we're truly grateful to have you here. Thank you. He would be going in as just another customer. Ethan had prided himself on running an inclusive, customer-friendly business. He had spent millions on diversity training and community engagement. But if there was even a grain of truth to this, he needed to see it for himself. And so, the next morning, he left his tailored suits behind, dressed in casual slacks and a polo shirt, and flew to Savannah alone. He didn't inform anyone, not his board, not his managers. This mission was personal. As Ethan stepped into the store, he took in the lavish interior, polished floors, shining glass cases, and mannequins dressed in the latest designer apparel. He walked up to the counter where a young white woman with sleek blonde hair was stationed. Her name tag read, Lisa. She barely glanced at him before returning her attention to her phone. He cleared his throat. "Excuse me, miss, I'd like to see that leather wallet on the top shelf." Lisa sighed heavily and looked up at him with an expression of irritation. "We don't have that in your price range," she said flatly. Ethan blinked. "I just asked to see it." "Well, sir," she said, stressing the title sarcastically, "this is a luxury store, not some discount shop. We cater to a certain clientele." Ethan's jaw tightened, but he forced himself to stay calm. "And what kind of clientele is that?" Lisa folded her arms. "Not your type." He stared at her, disbelief boiling into anger. Before he could respond, another salesperson, a middle-aged man, approached. Is there a problem here? Lisa rolled her eyes. This gentleman seems to think he can afford something here. The man chuckled, his eyes scanning Ethan's casual attire with a smirk. Sir, we're quite exclusive. Maybe try a department store down the street where the prices are more reasonable for someone like you. He exchanged a knowing glance with Lisa, who let out a stifled giggle. Ethan noticed a few other employees watching from a distance, some amused, others indifferent. His blood boiled, but he maintained his composure. He had faced this kind of treatment before, being judged solely by the color of his skin rather than the depth of his wallet. Are you implying that I can't afford to shop here? Ethan asked, keeping his tone measured. The man shrugged, a lazy smirk still plastered on his face. Look, I don't want to waste your time. This is a high-end store. We cater to a different clientele, people who understand real quality. If you need assistance finding something in your range, there's a bargain outlet 2 blocks away. Ethan's jaw tightened. He had walked into this store expecting the worst, but experiencing this treatment firsthand in his own establishment? That was something else entirely. Ethan clenched his fists. The sting of racism was not new to him, but experiencing it in his own store? That was infuriating. Instead of causing a scene, he took a deep breath. Thanks for your time, he said coolly, before walking out. Ethan did not return to his jet. Instead, he checked into a hotel and plotted his next move. The following day, he came back, not as a customer, but as the CEO. This time, he arrived in his signature tailored suit, escorted by his executive assistant and a few board members who had flown in overnight after he informed them of what had happened. His presence alone commanded authority, a stark contrast to how he had been treated the day before. The moment he stepped into the store, whispers spread among the employees, some recognizing him immediately. Lisa's confident demeanor faltered as she spotted the powerful entourage. She straightened her blouse and forced a tight-lipped smile, but Ethan could see the nervous flicker in her eyes. What none of them knew was that Ethan had another surprise in store. He had brought with him a private investigator who had spent the previous night gathering customer testimonies about the branch. The evidence was damning. Numerous reports of racial profiling, verbal mistreatment, and intentional neglect of minority customers. Ethan wasn't just here to fire people. He was here to make an example of them. And the cameras discreetly set up by his team ensured that this lesson would be seen by the entire corporate structure. Today was about more than discipline. It was about justice. As they entered, Lisa was at the front desk again, oblivious to the storm heading her way. She gave the same dismissive glance at Ethan before perking up at the sight of his white assistant and board members. Welcome to Caldwell Retail. How can I help you today? She chirped. Ethan took a step forward. You don't recognize me? Lisa blinked, her smile faltering. No, sir. Have we met before? The regional manager, a burly man named Todd, came rushing from the back. Mr. Caldwell, he greeted cheerfully. We weren't expecting you. Ethan's eyes darkened. No, you weren't. He turned to Lisa. You remember me now? Lisa hesitated, looking panicked. She does. Ethan cut in. Yesterday, I came in here dressed casually and was treated like a second-class citizen. I was refused service. I was told I didn't belong. Todd's face paled. Sir, Ethan held up a hand. Save it. He turned to Lisa. Do you know who I am now? Lisa's hands shook. You own this company? That's right. Ethan turned to the other employees who had witnessed yesterday's exchange but had done nothing. This store is a disgrace to the brand I built. You don't get to decide who belongs in my stores. That privilege is mine. Silence filled the store as employees shifted uncomfortably. But before Ethan could continue, an older black woman, a customer who had been browsing quietly in the background, stepped forward. Excuse me, sir, she said, addressing Ethan. I saw what happened to you yesterday. I was here, standing near the perfume counter, when they dismissed you like you were nothing. And you know what? It wasn't the first time I've seen them do it. A few employees exchanged nervous glances, while Lisa's face turned ghostly pale. The woman continued, her voice filled with quiet authority. I used to be a manager in one of your stores before I retired. I know the standards you set, and I can tell you, this place has been rotten for a long time. Ethan nodded, absorbing her words. Thank you for speaking up. That's exactly why I'm here. He turned to the employees, his expression steely. This isn't just about yesterday. This is about a culture that's been allowed to fester here. And it ends today. Lisa trembled, but before she could plead further, Ethan signaled to security, who promptly escorted her out. Justice, he muttered under his breath, has no room for second chances when the first one was built on discrimination. Ethan continued, effective immediately. You're fired, Lisa. And Todd, he turned to the manager. Consider your position terminated as well. If you allow this behavior, you're just as guilty. Lisa gasped, her eyes welling with tears. Please, I didn't mean. Save it. Ethan's voice was cold. You meant every word. In the days that followed, Ethan launched an internal audit of all Caldwell retail locations. Secret shoppers were sent in to gauge the customer experience. Employees who failed to meet the company's ethical standards were let go. Lisa, in an attempt to save herself, ran to the media claiming discrimination. But surveillance footage told the real story. Public backlash against her was swift, and she disappeared from social media. Meanwhile, Ethan implemented a program that would allow more Black entrepreneurs to become store owners under the Caldwell brand. He ensured every location held diversity training and personally sat in on some of the sessions. A month later, he returned to Savannah. The store had a new manager, a more diverse staff, and a different atmosphere entirely. When he walked in, he was greeted with warmth, professionalism, and respect. A young Black woman approached him and smiled. Good afternoon, sir. Welcome to Caldwell Retail. How can I assist you today? Ethan smiled back. Now this is how you run a business. Racism has no place in business or in life. Ethan's undercover experience revealed a harsh truth, but rather than walk away, he chose to fight it head on. His actions not only saved his company's reputation but reinforced a message. Respect and dignity are non-negotiable. Some lessons are best taught through experience, and for Ethan Caldwell, the lesson had been personal, but it had also been worth it.